Pellin Credo. Sorry, Cynthia. The
Oh, no
Pellin
problem.
Credo ground rules for the Peter Fleming Forum. The ground rules in the Pellin Credo are designed to support a safe, nourishing environment. We ask that you come to the meeting with a clear head, free of the influence of drink and drugs. 2, in any Pellin setting, you keep control of the pace and depth of your sharing. You may pass or say no to any suggestion. Your no will be accepted and not judged or analyzed. No means no. 3, even though the meetings are recorded, we ask that people respect the confidentiality of those present and do not share anything they heard outside the meeting. 4, in Pellin work, we have a strict no gossip rule. No gossip means we do not talk about anyone who is not present, even in a pleasant way.
Okay, so we do our name and location, little sharing. I'm Peter and I'm in Norfolk, England. Cynthia?
I'm Cynthia. I'm in Kankakee, Illinois.
Okay. Nikki?
Hi, I'm Nikki. I'm in Wimbledon, London.
Mary Stapleton?
I'm Mary. I'm in East Sussex, England.
Okay. Johnny?
Hello, Johnny Abla here in Los Angeles, California.
Okay. Vic?
I'm Vic Flagg. I'm in Abbotsford, British Columbia, an hour out of Vancouver.
Mary?
I'm Mary Gilliman and I'm in Rosarito Beach, Mexico.
Did I cover everybody? I wasn't ticking names. Sometimes I've got this list and I tick the name. Okay, what we're going to do today, it's like a revision because it's about feelings of accomplishment and the pendulum and how they relate. And I guess the point I want to put across today, just give me half a minute. With yeah, going back to the life forces for just a moment. If you remember it, yellow caring, red performance, green material, and green is the part about being organized. And on top of organization and files and paperwork. And that's the bit I'm not good at, okay. And this is a card we have on the pendulum, which I have every intention of putting in the post so everyone's got a copy of it, plus some other things. And so I apologize a bit for my not so good material life force. My material life force is better. You would have had these 3 weeks ago, okay? But I guess my material life force is good enough that we have this presentation of the pendulum, which I have used and developed over the years. We've also got one that I can't quickly put my finger on, but I think I've showed you before, which is simplified, and that's for children. So we've got this particular tool, which we say is as strong and sophisticated as psychiatric theories of bipolar, and at the same time we can teach it to kids. And there's something about that approach of having this material that is honed down and practiced and applied in a lot of different areas, that we can take it to different people with different backgrounds, different ages, different educational opportunities, educational qualifications. The same tool is useful to all those people. And we call this particular methodology, which I'm proud of, and we've got about 6 of them at the moment, I think. The Pellin learning cards. And the aim of the Pellin learning cards is to make the material very, what I call, graspable. Someone can sort of take this and look at it and read it and get a little bit of training in it. Someone's teaching it to them. Yeah, Vic.
Quick question. Is anybody else having a problem? I'm not hearing anybody and I'm getting garbled voices. Can you tell me if anybody's else connections or problems?
I'm
No,
fine.
I can't hear
I
anybody.
can
Okay,
hear.
thank you.
Do you want to test yours, Vic, and see how it goes?
I'm not sure Victor heard you, Peter, but I think it sounds like a weak internet connection his end. It's good to
Right.
speak up, it's good to check. If it happens to me, I know it's my connection, but if you're
Right.
not sure, that's fine to ask.
Are
But
you
I think-
hearing at all, Victor? Thumbs up if you are.
Can you hear us, Victor, or not?
I guess it's not
Looks
there.
like maybe he can't. He probably needs to restart his computer. in
Yeah,
case
that's what I
that
think he
helps.
says he's doing. Okay, got that. So
I'll
can
put it in chat. Oh, he says he's
Would-
doing that.
will you reply in chat,
Oh,
Mary? Because I'm no good at it.
yeah, of course.
So I'll repeat this when Victor comes back. That the Pellin learning cards are, for me, a really big deal. I am, I've trained people over who, were with me for very long periods of time. Cynthia.
Just while we're waiting to get the things, if you can somehow even get even take a picture of those cards and get them emailed to me, I could probably work something out. And actually, for me, I'd almost rather have an email version anyways, because I don't do paper. And also maybe a way to I don't know how to make, if you have a way to make those little circle things for the life forces, that's something I don't mind doing, and that would involve less going to the post and the like, if just doesn't
Thank
offer.
you very much. No, I'll really work on that. And in terms of making the little cardboard circles, I'm really good at it. So I can teach you how to do it, okay? How you get the center. Anyway, I won't go into a long, thanks, Victor. Good to have you back. I won't go into a long rigmarole, but I can with you go into a long rigmarole. Because you're quite right, they're quite easy to make.
I think it's a good point, Peter. I think the learning cards are good for when you're, in a group or if you're teaching children or something. But we should be sending out PDFs.
Yeah.
We should be sending out emails as well, even if we do.
I know, and that's the bit I'm not that good at yet, but I'm not.
Peter, don't worry about it. You've got a team that's working with you. Just
okay. Thank you.
Get on with the show.
Right. So to come back to this, the Pellin learning cards are a relatively recent development, like, I don't know, 10 years. Because remember, the material has been around 50. So, 10 years is relatively recent. And I'm very proud of them. I want to develop a whole methodology that someone sort of can grasp it and have a quick understanding of it. And that's a start. And, you know, there's a lot of things where and children particularly, you know, they learn something quickly. 1, 2, 3, 4. They're numbers. 1 and 1 equals 2. So there's I'll try and keep this a bit brief. It is about making the material readily accessible in what I call a graspable form, so someone can say, oh, that's this pendulum thing. And there's a high on it, and there's a low on it, and there's a middle of it called the calm. And recognizing that that's a good start and presenting it in such a way that that doesn't reduce the power and subtlety of it. Because in one way you can have this and sort of grasp it, but in another way it's a lifelong study. For someone whose pendulum swings as wildly as mine can, it's a lifelong study. And that's where I go back to Michelangelo's tools. And, you know, he had the hammer and chisel. They're a lifelong study for him. He's doing different things with them. So I can do different things with the pendulum, and it is a lifelong study. And if you happen to be following what I'm putting on Facebook at the moment, is a direct application of the pendulum to political demonstrations, because I think it's got a whole lot to offer there. And just to come into the nature of the pendulum, in the pendulum we talk about highs, and the high is a time when our emotions are reaching out into the world. We want to engage with people. The high side is physical, extrovert, and engaging. Vic.
So that prompts me to ask you a question. I would have thought the high would have been when you're lacking control. You're relating it, and you know, this is your development of Pellin, so I haven't been involved in all that for all these years. But I always thought the pendulum, if you're high, is you're lacking control. But you're saying that it's to do with your going outwardly. That's not necessarily lacking control.
Well,
am I right in that?
no, you're right, and certainly in some situations, the way I define the pendulum, it's a tool to give us choices about what we want to do with our emotions. That's the way I sort of get at it. And the compulsive high, the sort of big one right out here, we are out of control there. We're not in control. And the middle of the pendulum, which we call the calm, and these words are our jargon words. They're not, as recently we've been looking at authority, and that's a jargon word. These words are jargon words. And so the high doesn't necessarily mean feeling good. The high can be feeling good. It can be being in love, being enthusiastic, being high on drugs and booze, or being high on politics. You know, the compulsive high, the extreme high, way up here, is when and this is where you're right, Vic, where our emotions are in control of us, we are not in control of our emotions. That's the compulsive high of the pendulum. But the compulsive high, and the compulsive high of the pendulum, because our emotions are in control of us and we're not in control of them, we are close to being hurt and being hurtful. The high of the compulsive high of the pendulum, the red area here, is, you know, driving down the freeway and just having had an argument at home with a spouse, and because of that argument, I can drive at 80 miles an hour. I mean, because I'm so angry about what happened at home, I'll drive at 80 miles an hour. There's no connection between driving a car on a freeway and whatever happened at home. But we all, I talk about we're inside the bubble of our own emotions. And that's the only awareness we have. So, you know, to hell with you all, I'm going to drive the car however I like. And that is dangerous. I'm close to being hurt. I'm close to hurting somebody else. And that's what the compulsive high is like. We can also we've just got the promotion we want. We've just got the job we've always wanted. And we feel marvelous. And that's again, we go way up to the compulsive high and drive too fast. To take the choice of pulling over to the side of the road, you know, finding a slipway and reaching out and turning off the engine, just getting out the car and looking at the view, when we're in the compulsive high, it's almost impossible. And that same thing can be absolutely related into political activity, the political activity of the demonstrations. And one of the things we say about the compulsive high, there's always a code of negative around the positive and a code of positive around the negative. The code of positive around the negative of the compulsive high is there are some things we will miss out on in life if we never let ourselves have that big high. There can be a certain sexuality, there can be a creativity, a vision of what we're capable of, an unrealistic vision of what we're capable of, that we can only get if we will let ourselves at times have those extreme high emotions. So it's not all, yes, the pendulum is not the calm's the best place to be. Or we should always control our emotions. Mary.
Well, I just wanted to say it's a bit easier, I believe, to see the hurt in compulsive unpleasant highs. You know, if you're going to say the most hurtful thing you can think of to your life partner, if you're going to, you know, lash someone physically or with words, if you're going to feel your grief in a huge sobbing fit, irrespective of who's there and who else can cope with it. You know, the unpleasant high, it's easier to see how it's hurtful. Just to finish with, I remember when I first learned the pendulum, I thought, how can I give up the only thing that makes my life feel worth living, which was that I had happy compulsive highs. And I mistakenly thought that it was worth it to get high, even though my life had lows in. I didn't know the connection. I didn't know I went down into the lows because of the highs, but I wasn't going to give up my highs for a bit after learning the pendulum. And I was going to make another point that, I had no clue that the calm could be a place of feeling. I just assumed that the calm was flat and boring. So I wasn't interested in it for some time after learning and teaching the pendulum.
Yeah, that's where the tool of the pendulum, that's why I want what I call the graspability stage. You know, someone can pick up a hammer and say, oh, this is a hammer, you know, I can feel it. You know what it is? My aim is someone can pick up the card and say, oh, there is something about my feelings that this is related to. But when we get in, Vic.
So again, all very, very interesting and important. Is it accurate to say in this philosophy, you know, in our understanding, that there's greater awareness in the calm, because, you know, that would be a significant thing to recognize. If in the center of the pendulum is where your greater awareness is, because that would also be really greater functionality, etc. So that's my question.
Yeah, again, it's a tool, and you know, I go back to Michelangelo's tools, which anyone can Google, and they're really simple. In our perception, they're sort of crude, but you can do very subtle and sophisticated things with them, and they can solve complex problems. So in a similar way with the question of awareness, there's some awareness, and I want to go back to the pleasant highs in a minute, there's some awareness. David used to like to put out figures, and I like to put out figures sort of as a slightly as a humorous inside joke, okay? You know, 72% of awareness needs to happen in the calm, okay? But there's some awareness where we need even the big high. You know, the awareness that, is this going to be different? You know, are these series of political demonstrations going to be different? Is it going to be another betrayal? You know, you could say that after the Emancipation Proclamation, after the Dream Speech, they were Lincoln and King were betrayed. Is this going to be different? And there's something about a particular awareness like that, at times you have to go really high. The way I remember David saying it, if you're going to do that, be aware that you're doing it. And don't be there for too long. And I think that Van Gogh, who I adore, the painter, and you know, he's caricatured as being the crazy artist, and you know, his accident with his ear and all this stuff. But so he had this vision of what he created, and art as sublime as anything anywhere. And my take on it, he had that in a really big high, okay? But if you read his letters, which are voluminous, he's painting the actual creative act. So much happened in and around the calm. So I think, yeah, a lot of awareness, a lot of creativity. Some of the best sex can be when we're with someone we know really well, and it's slow and steady and gorgeous and passionate. It's not the same as the lust for somebody new. That's different. But that is not the only sexuality. And I use the two examples of the necessity of the big high and the relation of that. I use the examples of sex and creativity because people remember about sex. People will listen to you when you're talking about sex. And they'll be interested in when you're talking about creativity. But, you know, long, slow lovemaking with someone we've known all our lives, or, you know, consistent painting in ideas he had been working with day after day after day in the case of Van Gogh. So that's a relationship between the compulsive high, the extreme high, and the middle of the pendulum. And then in terms of awareness, and Mary's point about both the positive and the negative, and I learned this just working with guys in prison. There's a certain deep low, okay, compulsive low, which, like the compulsive high, can be dangerous. I mean, people in a very deep low can, particularly what we call a pleasant low, and the pleasant compulsive low is sort of martyrdom, I'm sorry for myself. But in that place, and this is, you know, some of these points have been crucial in terms of, you know, training psychotherapists. In the compulsive low, the really deep low, people can fake that they're in a calm and then take their own life. You know, the world, no one loves me, the world's impossible, and I know you really don't care about me even though you say you do. And someone can take their life, that kid, you know, convince someone they're not in a low, they're in a calm. And because they're in such a deep low, they can take their life. And that's the negative side of the deep low. And that's the positive, let alone the unpleasant deep low, which is depression and guilt, and the way that can be endlessly enervating and stay around for long, long periods of time. Just to sort of put it in quickly, the highs are much longer than the lows.
You said the highs are longer than the lows, and you meant the other way around.
Yes, thank you. The lows are much longer than the highs. Thanks, Mary. Yeah, I couldn't work it out. Yeah, I had it the wrong way around. Thank you. Yeah, you know, we can be high for so long and we have to come down, or it's called an overdose, isn't it? You know, we can't be high for forever. We can be low almost forever. And you can see how this has got huge applications to bipolar, to manic depression, to clinic depression, and what used to be called melancholia. I mean, these things have been around for a long time. But the positive in the very deep low, and I wonder if you've come across this, Mary, I came across it with guys in prison. There's a certain way people talked about being tired, okay? Look, you know, I don't feel that guilty about what I've done. You know, there's a whole lot of crime in the world. Rich people commit crimes. However, I'm tired of it. And I learned over time that that was a real tip-off that someone had a very good chance of doing well. And a much better chance of doing well than someone who's all fired up. You know, as soon as I get out of here, I'll never be back. I'm telling you I'll never be back. No, someone who will just say, I'm tired of it. And I think that someone sitting out a very deep low and getting the messages from that low that we need to get. I'm not.
I was just going to say in Al-Anon, it's probably an AA saying, I'm not sure, they say something like change happens when you're sick and tired of being sick and tired.
Exactly.
Quick, just confirmation of that, and not in professional service, but in some of the counseling and assistance I've done with people, it just twigged with me. I can remember someone saying to me, they're getting bored. And I eventually recognized that was a signal they were ready to change.
Yeah.
And that kind of connects with what.
I just want to sort of bring in feelings of accomplishment a bit, but when I was thinking about presenting this earlier today, the bit I sort of want to get across today, and as we move ahead with this material, there's a lot of precision in this. You know, there really is. There's a lot of precision in being able to see whether you're in a compulsive low or what we call a tolerable low, whether you're in a compulsive high or a tolerable high. You know, because in the tolerable area, which is the middle yellow part of the diagram, we got choices. You know, will I say, Mary's example earlier, will I say the very hurtful thing or not? You know, will I go in and just tell my boss off completely in a way that might put my job in jeopardy or not? And that within the pendulum, there is not the place where we're making that decision. That sort of lies elsewhere in this material. This part of it's a bit complex. What we call evaluating in terms of hurt and purpose. Another place, what we call evaluation strata. That's sort of the bottom line of the work. But just to put it in a more simple way, which I could have just then, the pendulum can help us make useful decisions. So in the compulsive area, I don't have the control. It's just going to come out. And at times, uncontrolled anger needs to come out. You know, at times we need to get wildly confident that the creative idea we have somehow that changes the shape of the universe, it's so important. You know, we sort of need those moments. If we have the calm of the pendulum and the tolerable part of the pendulum without the dark nights of the soul of the low or the wild bursts of confidence or anger of the high, we run the risk of missing out on life. It's, in my view, it's, and this is, need to slow down a little bit. Yeah, this is where, in my view, David Pellin's mind was extraordinary, because somehow within his work and within the pendulum, there's even a criticism. He didn't put it this way. There's a criticism of the meditative life, which so many people would regard as something to aim for, almost an undiluted good in the world, the meditative life, the reflective life. And what, with the pendulum, what we're saying is, yeah, you know, maybe that's okay, but you're taking out Vincent van Gogh, Dr. Martin Luther King, and Michelangelo. Maybe that's not such a good idea to take those three out. Maybe those lives were pretty useful to humanity, okay? And Gandhi, who I'm reading about at the moment, had a wild, sort of crazy thought that went through his mental processes. You know, he had huge highs about what he could achieve. I mean, they were bonkers, you know. I mean, this sort of little man, and then he chose to dress in this rather disreputable way, was going to sort of bring down the British Empire just because he could walk a long way. And he did, you know. So this to me is the power of David Pellin's mind, that, and that is, and there's nothing in this work, there's nothing in the pendulum or any of David's work that is disrespectful of, say, the meditative life. But you can come to the meditative life with this and say, yeah, okay, that's okay. But maybe the wild, unrealistic dreamers and actors have a place too. And that
I was
to
just
me,
thinking,
yeah.
well, I was just thinking about Joan of Arc. We don't know where her pendulum was when she heard like what she was supposed to be doing, but what we do know is that a 15-year-old peasant girl persuaded the King of France that she should leave the army.
I mean, that's
that's pretty
bonkers.
wild, isn't it?
That's bonkers. I mean, she's so high, her emotions are so messed up that we'll put a psychiatric category on her very quickly. Okay, you're right. I mean, you're absolutely right. And David's work can take in all that. When you get inside it, it's really quite extraordinary. Just to bring in feelings of accomplishment, the bit that will slow down the destructive swing of the pendulum is feelings of accomplishment. And the thing that will almost always enhance destructive swings of the pendulum, whether they are to a high or to a low, is feelings of accomplishment. One of the ways you can see the destructive side of the extreme swings, and just to go into just definitions a little bit, we're saying pleasant and unpleasant highs, okay? And that doesn't mean positive and negative, because they can be a positive in getting our anger out, and there is certainly a negative in, they always said it to me, heroin addicts. You know, if God developed anything better than this, he kept it to himself. You know, you don't know, Peter, what I get out of this sort of. So that was a very pleasant high, you know, totally destructive. So again, there's a real subtlety in it. The feelings of accomplishment, I guess you can say, sort of steady out the pendulum. They make it very steady. They make it, they give us more control over it. They give us a chance to use those extreme places, which are possibly dangerous and in themselves quite scary, and should be. Yeah, because while I said the positive side of, you know, the dark nights of the soul, which are the extreme lows, the compulsive lows on the pendulum. Yeah, some people say I'm too tired of this, so I'll give up drugs. And some people say I'm too tired of this and I'll give up my life. So that's a dangerous place. Feelings of accomplishment will tend to give us a more solid base to our pendulum. And then when you bring in contribution from hurt, purpose, authority, the other things we've looked at, there is which provide feelings of accomplishment, there is a real that we have a real chance to use our emotions really productively. And I think, you know, I would make the claim that I'm not an art historian and I'm not a psychologist, but I would make the claim that Vincent van Gogh's letters, which detailed to the point that no other artist has kept. And to me, the absolute moving thing, that all those letters were to his brother, who paid the bills and sent him enough money to buy the paints and the brushes and the canvases. All those letters were to his brother, and his brother kept them. And now they are one of the largest documents in the history of art, all those letters. It just touches me, you know. Father's Day, Brother's Day, okay? And you can see there the way his purpose in his painting, the feelings of accomplishment he got from it. But, you know, I would just speculate as his life is a useful example of some of the things we're teaching, I would speculate that feelings of accomplishment ran out, and he took his life. And he needed someone to come along and give him some feelings of accomplishment that might have come from a relationship, might have come from a longer friendship. Maybe if he'd had more money and could have gone and rented a little apartment near where his brother and his brother's family was, and so he was getting some feelings of accomplishment there while he was still producing art. Because the art he produced at the end of his life is extraordinary. Extraordinary. So I guess I just want to leave it there, and if people have got anything to say. Yeah, Mary.
Well, I'd like to say something because I think the thing about feelings of accomplishment and feeling productive is really important, because one of the things I noticed about my extreme compulsive highs and lows when I started getting better and had a bit more time in the tolerable area was when I was deeply low, I had zero feelings of accomplishment about anything at all in life. And I can say a bit more maybe when other people contributed about what I now do about that, or was doing about that when I did still have lows. But in the extreme compulsive high, everything gave me feelings of accomplishment that were false, really, because what gave me feelings of accomplishment was really being in fantasy land. I fantasized all these marvelous things I was and all these marvelous things I could do. And I found a lot of satisfaction in that. And I never, I characterized my life when it was dominated by extreme swings. And I didn't do anything when I was high because I was happy. And I didn't do anything when I was low because I was so unhappy. So I didn't do anything for some period in my life. That's not quite true, but it's almost true. So that was what I wanted to say, because I was interested in that falseness of feeling as though everything in life is satisfying when in fact I wasn't accomplishing much.
Yeah, and I think that is where the calm of the pendulum is so powerful and so important, because that will almost always give us the reality check. And it'll give us a reality check, a responsibility check. When the young American politician AOC backed Bernie Sanders, and he was in hospital. He just had a heart attack, right? I mean, his campaign was sort of over. And it wasn't picked up much, but I noticed that someone said to her, "Why did you back him then?" Because it looked like a loser. And she just said, it was a debt check. Okay? What she owed this guy, okay? What she owed him. It was a debt check. And I always thought that was just a nice expression. Sort of David Pellin had a statement where he said, if you forget the laws of gratitude, the gods will destroy you. Okay? He spoke like that. And, when AOC and Andrea Ocasio-Cortez said, it was a debt check, she knew what she was saying. I owe this guy. He's in hospital. Okay. And so I'm going to make my move now. And I think that's the calm of the pendulum, when you sort of weigh things up, you see it all. It's not that you don't have feelings. That's why I use the examples of long, slow lovemaking, long, slow creativity happens in and around the calm, not in the highs. The highs are sort of romanticized. And the lows can be romanticized. Dark nights of the soul can be romanticized. yeah, some people write great poetry there, and some people kill themselves there. You don't want to mess with that one. Johnny, do you want to say anything about all of this?
Perfect, thank you. So my brain's putting all these pieces together, and this is what I came up with. So, because I teach shop, so where's this pendulum swinging from? So I'm thinking it's from my heart space, because it's got to swing from somewhere, right? The mechanics of it. So, and I'm thinking, because I went through this, I've been dealing with, I shouldn't say breakup, I almost had a breakup with the relationship that went on, because this helped me find out dealing with my codependency and all the things that I've done in my existence on the planet because of codependency. Now being aware of the codependency, and then this gives me tools. So it kind of, and it goes back to my father, and I know it's today's Father's Day, but it goes back to my dad, to my parents. I mean, because when I jumped back to do the artwork, to doing the artist stuff, my parents were all worried and everyone was all worried. And I said, well, what about this? I said, well, I have a house. I got married. I did everything that everybody wanted me to do. Like, I have a master's degree, I dropped out of a doctoral program. I have a house. I have insurance. I have a car. I have health. I have, you know what I mean? Like, okay, you know, and it got to the point where my dad finally just seeing how miserable I was, that he just said, you know what, Johnny, why don't you do what you would do for yourself?
Yeah.
And this all is in combination with you guys. So this wasn't like, they say when the student's ready, the teacher appears, you know? And so when I asked for tools, I was like, all right, God, thank you, you know? Because it's like, anyhow, so that's what I was thinking, like, where's this place swinging from? You know what I mean? Like, why is it, you know what I mean? It's, you know, a squared plus b squared equals c squared, you know, that's triangle. Okay, well, why, but it's gotta be, there's gotta be a centerpiece it's coming from. Okay, so that's gotta be the mind, body, and soul. And if you're not doing what you love, regardless of money, regardless of all that, then you're really not yourself, and then you're being codependent. And then you're just doing things just to make everybody else happy, and you lose yourself. So then you're swinging to the right and to the left, and you're making everybody's lives miserable, including your own, because you just didn't do your life force of loving yourself, of just doing things that you love. Because I know I'm going off, but I'm in a flow right now, and it's what was it? Self-love, coded self, yeah, self-destruction. So it's kind of like, all right, so if you're not loving yourself, then that's self-destruction. I don't know, it literally, I keep going back to the centerpiece. Like, that's got to be mind, body, and soul. Of it literally has to do with just loving yourself. I know it sounds so simple, but like, it's dealing with codependency, the awareness, but because of the tools, and I love when you said Michelangelo and the tools, it just makes perfect sense to me, because I used to look at life as I'm building a robot. Here, let me get this piece, or let me get me this piece, you know what I mean? Which means that I'm borrowing pieces from everybody else, instead of looking at myself as a block and going, all right, where do you want to sculpt, you know? And I guess enjoying that process of with that hammer and that chisel, and just going, all right, I'm going to chisel a nose today. You know what I mean? It may not be the best nose today, may not be that, but hey, I'm really enjoying the process. And who gives a fuck if everybody else around me is like, and that's what the argument was with my girlfriend. I was so proud to tell you guys, I was so proud that I applied to be a college teacher again. And what did my girlfriend do? Great woman, wonderful woman. You know what I mean? I'm a big fan of Joan of Arc, by the way, so that's why I'm glad you brought that up, Mary. And it's just wonderful woman. But I'm like, I can't give anything to anybody because I can't, because I'm not me. And then the issue is like, well, what about the job? And I'm like, well, I did, it's out of my hands. So I didn't swing to the right, I didn't swing to the left. I was literally just going, well, what more can I do? I filled out the application. I'm overly qualified. like, it's out of my hands at this point. I did my job and now I'm moving on. And if they call me, they call me. And if they don't, they don't. But I'm still happy with myself because I accomplished the fact that I came out of the woodwork to put myself out there to, as a gift to the world, and saying, all right, I'm not going to hide and I want to give back because of the people who helped me out. And that's just back to like that self-love. Because if you're, I don't know. So I always, that's what I know I went on a tangent, but thank you for listening. But it's literally, if you're not doing what you love, and that's when my life really at a really bottom, I had a choice to make, and I was at San Francisco, and we were literally looking at murals, these art murals, and it was amazing to me because I'm come from the country, and I was just like, whoa, you know what I mean? And it's just this art. My he's a musician, and so that's why I'm in LA, and his buddy in San Francisco, and I just seen all these murals of all these protests and freedom fighters, and what happened was, it related to me to my whole life, what I seen. And anyways, there's this mural of Malcolm X, and it said, I'm going to die doing the things I love. Now, growing up as a kid, I always thought that's the fear base of like, wow, shoot, man, you're gonna die, you know what I mean? But then it took a while for me to figure it out, like, hey, if you don't do what you love, you're gonna die, and you're gonna cause a big mess. So I digress. So thank you for listening.
No, well, I just thank you for all that. And I'm a nag as a trainer, okay?
I need it, and I appreciate it.
I'm just a nag, I apologize.
No apology. No. This is all meant to be. This is all meant to be.
Yeah, and you know, I would say around that, you know, pendulum, because that will expand the choices you've got about your own intensity. That's what the pendulum can really provide. And in terms of just something I just want to drop in terms of decisions, it can be really useful to check out how we feel about something when we're high, how we feel about when we're low, and how we feel about it when we're in the middle. That doesn't necessarily guarantee that every decision will be full of wisdom, but it will sure as hell prevent disasters. It really will. Really will. It's a good one.
It's a good start, and that's what I got from that. And that's what, between YouTube, you guys, and learning about my codependency and everything, and that's what it was this week. It echoes that of, how do I feel? Because everyone's like, John, you never speak up of what you want, you know, and that's why I was telling you guys last week. I feel like this week actually, Wednesday, that I was in alignment with my life, you know, and then all hell broke after that. But then I was okay because I had the tool. The pendulum makes sense to me, and you know, and I don't do a lot of reading on your guys' stuff yet. So, but I know so as an experiment, being the uncontrolled group, it works for me.
That's where this card, and I will.
Perfect. That's exactly what I'm getting.
I must get them photographed to you, Cynthia, for sure.
When Mary did that for her show, my brain just, and everybody around me, it wasn't just me, like it was like this, like, thank you. A hammer. Oh, we could use a hammer instead of a fist. Oh, cool. Thank you, Mary.
Okay. Cynthia, do you want to come into all on this?
Yes, actually, I think that one, to give gratitude. Mary taught me about the pendulum years ago very close to when we first met, because I was having issues in part with pendulum swings. But one of the things that I think that there's something physical about it, and I do believe that David Pellin must have been tapping into traditional wisdom, because the pendulum, which I actually didn't think about until after I got sick. There was an astrologer who jokes about nobody, you know, sometime in your life you're going to get interested in medical astrology. But anyways, one of the things that it dawned, because I could never understand in astrology, particularly traditional, because it was combined with traditional medicine, you know, back from Galen, and the whole concept of temperament. And I could never quite figure out how it worked and in the chart, because nothing ever made sense in terms of the material until I applied the pendulum to the concept of temperament. And I realized this is really how they must have looked at it. And temperament, in terms of, we were talking about melancholy, actually that was technically being too cold and too dry. It really made a huge difference in how I understood, and I'm actually using that. I mean, it's not quite the pendulum's not quite the same. I mean, they're a little bit different, but the whole temperament is based on, I believe it's based on, it always has been based on a pendulum, even though it's often treated as static now in, you know, in modern people who are using traditional methods. But anyways, on a personal level, one of the things that I learned through both of the pendulum and the work I've been doing on temperament is that I don't have a strong, well, one thing, that highs and lows will actually have a physical component, and some people physically have a better tolerance for highs and lows than others, in terms of what it's going to do to their body. And one of the things I learned is physically, I don't have a very good tolerance for highs. I have diabetes, and highs, more than anything I eat. I mean, and I also tend to eat worse when I'm pendulumy, but even if I'm eating badly and I'm not in a high, my blood sugar doesn't go up, but my blood sugar goes up badly. In fact, I've been having a lot of trouble with it, with anxiety related to, you know, pandemic and, you know, everything going on. But it's also very hard for me because I know I have to keep cool. I have a very cold temperament. I you know, and I don't have a tolerance for highs, and I'm going to feel it physically in my body, even if I seem to be in a pleasant high, and even if I'm not lashing out at anybody, it's going to come out in my blood sugar. But one of the things is that when I'm at the level I'm supposed to be, it's boring. So it's really hard for me to accept, not, you know, to be disciplined about not going into pleasant highs or not doing it too much, because it's like, well, this is dull. You know, but I have to, it's something it's a growing edge for me. Thank you.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. I do want to say that I've been around this work for a very long time, okay? And I love it when something new comes in. And I haven't heard, over all these years, I haven't heard anyone use the term pendulumy, and I think it's just great. Thank you. A contribution, okay?
Actually, I think Mary sometimes used it with me. So
okay,
it's not
okay.
coming from
Well,
me.
then when I'll give the credit to Mary. But pendulumy is really good. We tend to talk about pendulum swingers, and that's a little bit sort of finger pointing, okay? But pendulumy I really like.
Well, can I say something
Yeah.
to what Cynthia said? So I think what you just said is like what I said, that, you know, when I first, because if you need a lot of learning the tool of the pendulum, it does go through different stages for me, and it sounds similar in what you're saying. That when you, like I found out, and what John is referring to is in my play, that I couldn't not be crazy, but I could block the high from getting higher. So I could restrain the high. And as I stopped being crazy but still had swings, I found out that I would have boring patches. And then I'd still get low anyway. And part of me would say, because I had been high, not crazy high, but high. And then a part of me might be a bit rebellious and say, you know, is it worth it for this, this dull, flat period? And I worked out over time, I just sensed that, okay, I'm not getting the deep intensity of the calm. because I'm applying like a wrench, and I'm saying, you know, restrain, break the highs, I call it, like breaking a car. Break the highs, break the highs. You get a bit of time in the tolerable, but you don't hit, I didn't hit the calm. And now I'm in that wonderful, mysterious, magical place. I mean, not now, this second. I can be in that magical, mysterious place that Peter talks about, where you have all the intensity of the feeling, but you're calm. And I think what I found helpful was that, and it does actually, I think this answers something Johnny said. We have two nervous systems. I don't want to go into this in detail because I like the pendulum as a pendulum, but basically the one where you can't control your physiological responses, that happens when you go in trauma, which is actually called sympathetic, I think, is like a high. You're agitated, you know, whether it's pleasant or unpleasant, you can't do much about it, you can't get out of it, even if I found you could restrain it. And then there's the sympathetic, whichever way around it is, I think parasympathetic, where you're, you know, your breathing's even and your heart's not racing and everything's kind of calmer. So I found the word agitation helpful because there's mental agitation in the deep low, physical agitation, literally. I mean, if you've had really extreme highs like me, then you know, like, whole body's racing, all your cells are lit up. Your thing I've mentioned before, I could feel heat coming out of my head, like, phew, you know. So that the whole idea of I could have really deep, intense feelings when I'm in the middle of the pendulum was like a mirage to me for years. But, you know, now it's a lived experience. And so that's what I'm kind of saying to Cynthia and maybe to Johnny as well, that, oh yeah, I can see this is a good thing to do, but it's a shame it's boring, is a phase. It may be different for you because I know that Cynthia, you know, your temperament is such that the highs aren't very happy for you, you know, don't have a good effect for you. But I bet there's a place where you can find depth in the calm. Sorry, I can see you've got your hand up. I'll shut up.
No, actually, what you're saying is actually what I've been doing because for me it's both physical and emotional. It's making sure to keep things cool. One of the things I've been doing, sort of like what you're talking about on a physical level, which is sort of a metaphor, I guess, is I'm allowing when I have a little spice or some hot things, I make sure to have, and I've been finding tasty stuff that's cold, like, and not just ice cream, but like with rose and using herbs and stuff, but sort of doing that kind of thinking about, okay, all right, I'll allow myself a little, you know, a little spice, but then, and like I said, I know that's not the same as, but I think there's a metaphor, but then I'll make sure to allow myself some and find some yummy stuff that's cold and you know, find some stuff that, so I'm not just like not allowing myself any heat, but but to sort of, instead of doing more balancing, and that's been helping with, which I think is what you were saying, and that's what I had thought about. So when you were talking.
Yeah. Okay, thanks. Shelley, do you want to come in?
Oh, sorry, I'm late. I've kind of off to watch the beginning of the talk or whatever we call this. But it sounds like we're talking about the pendulum more than anything. I thought it was like projected something or other. I forgot the topic. Projected. You know what I mean? There was something else we were going to talk about.
Feelings of accomplishment we have, and
okay.
Yeah, I've been a little bit sloppy about the titles, but I think rejected efforts and accepted efforts we're going to get up.
Oh yeah, okay.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm interested in that. Yeah, that's all. Thanks.
Okay. Mary, do you want to come in England?
Which of the many things whizzing around in my head shall I talk about? When I was a child, I was brought up in a family where children were seen and not heard, and definitely weren't allowed to get overexcited about anything. and me and my little sister had to sort of like sit quietly, nicely, you know, hairbrushed, and while all the relatives sat and talked, and we didn't even have anything to say. So I'm very familiar in the, you know, the low, the quiet, lost in my head and off somewhere else. So getting over into the high always feels a little bit unknown and uncomfortable, physically uncomfortable, when that adrenaline starts coming in, you know, the shakes start happening. However, I'm also aware that I need to be there in order to get the energy that's available. There's not a lot of energy in the calm, for me. Yeah, so when something does come along that just gives me a bit of a boot up the arse and sets me off into a higher plane of the pendulum, there are things that I can find very positive because of the energy in it, and that can, you know, be the creativity, the ideas, the new interests that it can bring up for me. So whilst I tend to avoid the high, I know that it has many things that are very good for me as well. And I knew this when I did the course, and somewhere along the way I've sort of lost it and forgotten it. So it's good to be revisiting it again. Yeah. So I know I need ways to keep pushing myself out of that easy place in the calm, where I could loll around forever. Yeah.
Yeah, that's where I guess I like, and I'm proud of the concept of tools, which is mine, because the individual differences are, you know, so much. I mean, everything you said, I could almost say, except about the calm. I'm sorry, about the low, you know. Yeah, because I grew up in a, you know, I have what I call the privilege of a happy childhood, and you know, the sort of determination, the focusing, the toughness that is available from the low side, I tend not to have. So I just, yeah, I appreciate that. Nikki, do you want to come in?
Hello. Yeah, interesting. Very similar result on me to Mary, who just spoke, Mary Stapleton. Although for different cause. Trained myself as a child to not draw attention to myself. So I'm still, you know, pretty much the same. Like boring. I can be a bit on the low of the pendulum too much. I can have small highs. If I just get the right music going and I'm driving with the right thought in my head for a minute, and I really enjoy that, but it's really short. Don't have highs very much in things I do in life. Feel like I haven't cracked it. I feel I need to crack, you know, I don't know how to enjoy life more. I don't understand how you enjoy life more. Whilst I'm not depressed or whatever else, something worse, I don't know. Anyway, that's my thoughts. Thank you.
Yeah, I think, I mean, that Thanks. And that's a real example of the tools. You know, it's a tool. So some people could use it to learn how to get high. And that's what they need to do. And that, you know, the different examples we have here. And some of us need to learn the destructive or the self-defeating side of highs. But some other people need to say, hey, you know, I need to find highs in my life. And Mary.
Well, I just wanted to speak to that because it reminded me of one of the ways that I use the tool of the pendulum in connection with feelings of accomplishment. I taught myself that if I managed to notch down a high and keep my mouth shut when I wanted to talk, for example, because my goal was to use the pendulum, I got a feeling of accomplishment. And because I was getting a feeling of accomplishment, then it fed into, I mean, for a long time in my life, my main purpose in life became getting control of my extreme swings. And I worked on it really, really hard, but that was a trick I taught myself. Use whatever tool, in this case, the pendulum. Don't say or do the thing you feel like doing and get a feeling of accomplishment from the not doing. And
well,
I wanted to
sorry.
say about I just wanted to follow up with how I deal with feelings of accomplishment in deep lows and what I teach my clients. That in a deep low, you don't want to do anything. And even if you do something, you don't get a feeling of accomplishment from it if you're in a really deep low. Or I don't anyway. So I taught myself and other people, think of the things that give you feelings of accomplishment when you're not in a deep low, and do them just if you possibly can. And it can be really small. It can be getting out of bed. It can be having a shower or washing your teeth after all that day. Do the small goal. You probably won't feel the feeling of accomplishment, but again, you've used the tool, two tools, the pendulum and feelings of accomplishment. And what I noticed was, although I couldn't get the warm glow that goes with feelings of accomplishment when you're in the middle or higher, I did not feel as tortured. I did not feel as bad as on the days when I didn't get out of bed, didn't do my teeth, etc. And it works, you know, because you notice, I'm not enjoying this, but I did do the shopping, even though I've had times, depressions in my life where it would take me 45 minutes to get out of the house and 45 minutes to get out of the car to do a walk or to go into the shop, because I was just in torture the whole time, mental torture. So, but on those days, when I got home, I'd done the walk or I'd done the shopping. So I didn't feel as bad. It was like a tiny lift in it. So, I mean, that's very extreme. My lows and highs were very extreme. And it's not, you know, as I said, it's a different problem. Feelings of accomplishment in an extreme high are, but boy, I mean, I've done a lot for Pellin in the couple of months I've been the director of communications. All of that is because I taught myself, if you act out of an extreme high to actually do something, you will A, bring your pendulum down, B, have a feeling of accomplishment, and C, you've got a building block. And I can pretty much decide to do something and do it now. Like that's a really big statement and achievement because I've got the follow through, not in material life force things, not the follow through of someone for whom it's a natural talent, but I have got the follow through, and it's based entirely on that self-discipline of bring the high down by doing an action and then do it again, do it again, do it again, do it again, just keep acting. And then that was a factor in not getting that high, because you're using the energy. You're grounding it in constructive action. You get the feeling of accomplishment, you bring your pendulum down, and it's Vic's triangle, you know, it's going in a direction. I mean, David's triangle that Vic talks about. You're not, it's not a big goal. You're going from one little goal to a little goal to another until suddenly I'm a competent, functioning, responsible adult, you know, for the last, whatever, 15, 20 years or so. Okay, that's it.
No, I think that's really useful, because I think also that's I guess one of the ways I want to develop what I call the methodology of tools and the graspability of the learning cards. This is not what I say, or it's not what David said, it's how you're using the tools. And I think we can sort of get that across. And that's why I bang on about Michelangelo and Google it, and they come up and they're crude. You know, we wouldn't buy them. We would not think that great things can be done with those tools, because tools are what you buy at Home Depot, or you know, this fancy stuff that comes in a great box and all sorts of things. No. So, you know, what yours, yeah, sort of using, how can I get feelings of accomplishment? How can I get some feelings of accomplishment when I'm down, you know, when I'm feeling lousy? And often, and that can be a struggle, because we will tend to sabotage ourselves.
Can I jump in?
Yeah, sure.
Is that okay for me to say something? I'm just not sure, because I've got a bad connection. I'm sorry. Are you hearing me?
Yeah, you're on.
Yeah, it's been really, really interesting. You know, just going back to what several of you have said. Cynthia talked about, you know, there's a physical component, you know, and I remember David teaching us about regulating your pendulum was to take a deep breath, you know, and do the deep breath. And I also remember that, you know, as an adult, I learned that, as a little kid, I was a hyperactive child. Well, I remember now that, yeah, sure, I used to have peanut butter and syrup sandwiches, and, you know, with all kinds of syrup. And so I was getting all kinds of sugar. So surprise, surprise. So there is a physical component to it. So that's really significant. Johnny and Mary both said something interesting. Johnny was looking for the center. What's the center of this pendulum? I'm going to come back to that in a moment. I'm going to share something that I heard David say in the unit. So Johnny's asking, where's the center? And Mary says, talking about not getting the deep intensity of the calm. Where's that magical place? So this is all very, very interesting. I recall, and this is posed a question to Peter as well, but I recall, you know, being in the unit, and I bear in mind that I was coming from, you know, Eastern meditation and all kinds of a very, you know, withdrawn kind of state. And then I was getting in the face of, getting this stuff all in the face of this sound behavior oriented teaching, big shock for me. But I remember a moment in the unit when, for some reason, meditation was being discussed. And it didn't get discussed very often. And I'd be interested to hear Peter's feedback here. Meditation didn't get discussed very often. And in fact, the question I posed to Peter, and you can come in a moment, it's interesting to me that meditation was not one of the lectures. You know, there was no lecture on meditation. Now, the interesting thing about that is I remember being in the unit, I remember this discussion happening about meditation. And of course, I was all ears, and I remember a few people, possibly even me, saying something about, well, you get to a certain state in meditation. And I hark back to, you know, and then David said something really, really interesting. I've said in my essay that he generally pushed away the occult, the astral travel, and all that sort of stuff, right? He was very, I felt he was very concerned that his philosophy did not get dragged into the big trend of the day. But at this moment, I remember him saying something, and it struck me. He said, "That's the true self." He used that phrase. He said, "That's the true self." People were talking about, there was this little discussion that happened spontaneously about meditation, and a couple of ring holders were saying, "Well, I work on," and David said, and I remember it was very interesting. He said, "That is the true self." And I thought, wow. And yet there was no real follow-up on that, in the sense that there's no lecture about meditation, but there's no question at all in my mind, absolutely none, that when Mary talks about getting the deep intensity of the calm, Peter and Johnny's talking about what's the center, David Pellin operated from that place. David Pellin operated from that place, and there was a special energy. Sorry, this is the mystical astral. We don't want to get there, but there was this special energy there, and he operated from that place. When you talk about being able to make use of the emotions, you can see him in the film with this finger and all of this, but to be there, the difference where I can see a lot of other people doing this finger thing is, hey, I don't want any of that. You're just out of control, right? But that was not the case with David. He was operating from place. I posed a question. I mentioned that, and I just want to pose the question to Peter about that. Peter, I'm presuming you were involved in the ring holder training, and I never did, even though I took the lectures twice. Did he ever get into depth on the subject of meditation? And did you ever hear him say anything about that? Because I think it's quite significant. Thank you.
No, he didn't. He was really, well, a couple of things about that. If, yeah, I guess this is me indulging myself a little bit about David's story. He really somehow or other knew. I've made a lot in my work and the way I've developed it, and call it, I call it contribution training in the Pellin tool. But I've made a big thing about the power relationship in the therapeutic world. And power tends to corrupt, and absolute power tends to corrupt absolutely. And people who are therapists and social workers and counselors, of which I've been, have way more power. But I work in the helping professions. I'm a good guy. It doesn't apply to me. Power tends to corrupt. Absolute power tends to corrupt. No, you are ordinary like everyone else, and power can corrupt and does corrupt in our field of work. And of course, if you take it into the worst of the church or psychiatry and the abuses that can happen because of too much power, somehow or other he knew that. And because always when you talk about meditation, David was not afraid to set himself up so he would be mocked, okay? And, come on, Dave, you're not meditating, you're having a nap, okay? Because there was this big couch. And, and he would do that. And my writing, which I've done extensively on who he is and who he was, I also use the example, I don't know if you remember, but he wore a white shirt that were sent to the laundry, so they were starched, okay? Crisp white shirt. And he was a big guy and awkward. And someone would come up to him and say, a person who was, just in this place, hadn't been there very long, but that person could go up to David and say, Dave, you need to change your shirt. You spilled coffee on it, okay? My view is at times he did it deliberately, So someone could come up to him and there was a stack of laundered white shirts, right? So he could always change his shirt. And my take on him, which is laudatory, I don't deny, he deliberately set himself up so he would not be turned into the guru, okay? So he would not be put on some sort of pedestal. He even said at one point, he said it to me very, very clearly, a bit privately, if you want to destroy someone, all you got to do is turn them into a hero and wait, okay? But even the times, were the age of Aquarius, and that had been preceded by, not that many years by McCarthyism. I think he'd been burnt around politics, and I think he was slightly afraid of being burnt around putting himself up as some sort of cult figure, and he was very careful not to go there. I think he had a lot to say about politics. I think one of the ways you can look at his work, he was influenced by Marx, by someone talking about Marx. Marx's view of alienation, Marx's psychology, but he never said any of that. And I think he did not talk about meditation. He totally believed in it. I use it all the time. This is almost the only thing I do where I don't use meditation. And I think he wasn't going to go there, okay? He wasn't going to be the cult figure on Fourth Avenue. He was going to be the philosopher on Fourth Avenue. And that was a much more serious statement. And that was a time of, all sorts of people came in with all sorts of stuff. And he totally kept his feet on the ground. Totally. And I think, my guess is, and having thought about it all this time, I think he would have loved to have given a lecture on meditation. And I think he would have loved to take off on politics. My guess is he and a friend of his, who was the one person in the establishment in Vancouver who backed him, a guy called, he was a doctor, he was a dean of part of the medical school. And I think they got burnt during McCarthy times, and they were very careful of it. And I think in another way, Dave was very careful of the meditation because that would have taken him into that direction, which is interesting, which meant he was surprisingly disciplined. And if you look at the film, he doesn't look like a disciplined guy at all. And he was surprisingly disciplined. He also, and this is my praise of him, undiluted, he developed a school of thought and practice, what he called a philosophy, which did not protect him, okay? He was sort of exposed. He could be exposed by his own material, like you're too much into the performance life force. In his word for that, you could go after him there. If you look at the others, they're Freud, Jung, Carl Rogers, Maslow, a whole lot of people. Their sort of school of thought and practice protects them, okay? Like Freud was shy and didn't like to have eye contact with people, so he had them lie down on a couch. And David's work is not like that. He didn't protect himself through his thought. Victor and I were talking about it earlier with Mary. So we got to do something to get Vancouver, Canada, the glamorous glass city of the world, to recognize David Pellin. We've got to do that.
We're after the hour. Perhaps you just noticed we should.
Yeah,
take the
let's. Thank you for. Thanks, Rick. Yeah, let's just finish up. I'll try and be brief. I'm Peter, and I'm in Norfolk, England. And as I've said often, thank you for coming. It's so important for me to have a venue where I can say this stuff. Yeah. Johnny?
Hello, Johnny Avila, Los Angeles. So I relate with Victor about, because I was the kid who put a lot of sugar in my milk, and then milk already has a lot of sugar. So I switched over to honey, and it's changed everything for acting. And so I do agree with that pendulum. It's also mind, body, soul, your diet. So that was like, oh, I had that. So I did that. And so with the tools, what I got from everything, I feel like more like Bruce Lee. It's like, I'm going to use any tool I need necessary to defeat my opponent, which might be me. So, or to create me. And something that Mary brought up, that everything, it's literally, there's this Marine on YouTube, and he talks about, if you want to change the world, start off by making your bed. And that's what Mary reminded me of, is that Marine, that Joan of Arc. If you want to change the world, start off with little tiny things. And this lady, it was a little bit, I think, between the pendulum, the tools, and the meditation, for me, that works perfect. And the whole thing about gratitude, because that's what started it off. It was like, write 3 things, like I can't even get out of bed. Lady, all right, write 3 things you're grateful for. Air. I'm grateful for air. That's how it started, you know? And so yesterday I'm like, God, thank you for this pistachio. 5 years later, you know what I mean? And so, and getting back to yourself. And that's what I liked about what Victor and everyone said, was because it's like that person said, you're like this lamp with layers and layers of cloth on top that you have to peel off. And those layers are not from you. Those are layers that society or people, or unknowingly, you know what I mean, on top of you. And as you slowly get those layers off, your light shines and at a piece of happiness. So you guys are awesome. So thank you so much. Think about you. Love you guys.
Shelley? Thanks, Johnny.
Oh, hi. Well, it's good for me. I haven't talked a lot about it, but I definitely understood what Mary was saying about the pendulum swings and about the sympathetic nervous system response going into high gear. So, you know, that for me is also something I'm always working on. And I like the high, so it's kind of, you know, like figuring it out. You know, I think I was raised in a sort of a family where, yes, my mom did expect us to be perfect little girls, my sister and I, but my father was a spiritual counselor who said, be who you are, live your life, feel your feelings. You know, I grew up with this, you know, already all this awareness and all this stuff. So I sort of have this dichotomy within myself about these things. So I notice how I'm always working on being me, but being calm, being centered.
Okay, Nikki?
Hello. So I'm Nikki in Wimbledon, London. Have we done that bit? Yeah, as usual. It's just interesting hearing everybody's different takes on something that I kind of know so well, but am so familiar with in relation to myself and my experience of it, that never really changes. And I struggle to change a bit. And it's not at all bad the way I am, but changing is just really hard. Anyway, thanks everybody.
Okay, thanks. Vic?
Yeah, well, as always, very, very enriching, and thank you to everybody. Really, I received something from everybody. It's very, very quickly. I had 2.5 days of a massive spring clean that lasted a little while, and I hoped as I got to the bottom of every box, I would find David Pellin's poem, you know, and I didn't. Oh, talking about pendulum, you know. So I was a bit surprised that I didn't find my copy, but I'm hoping to get a copy. I really feel quite strongly that the Pellin Institute really should have these poems. I think it's really important. I believe that you would all really enjoy the poems because they're very David Pellin centric, and in the sense that, as I said before, anybody can pick up Wordsworth or Khalil Gibran and understand, but you couldn't do that with Pellin's poems. But you people, us people here, would really get a lot from it. So I hope to find them. I'll get back and report on that later. So this is Vic, and I'm in Abbotsford, British Columbia. Thank you to all.
Okay. Mary, in England?
I'm Mary. I'm in Eastbourne on the south coast of England. Thank you.
Cynthia?
I'm Cynthia. I'm in Kankakee, Illinois. And one of the things we're talking about, the Pellin, David Pellin's philosophy and everything is something real. You know, I went through a lot of stuff growing up, and I've tried to do a lot of stuff, including 12-step groups, therapy, and the like. And actually, it was not until I was until I met Mary and I was exposed to some of the Pellin tools that there was actually something that felt real and that was very helpful and very useful, even when I was still stuck in a lot of stuff. So I just wanted to put that out there. And two, just something I was thinking about when I get into dangerous lows, and maybe as a humor, when I know when I'm way too far into a low is I'm annoying myself. It's like, oh goodness, I can't even stand myself anymore. Stop that. This is so.
Okay. Mary, in Mexico?
Hi, I'm Mary in Rosarito Beach, Mexico, and I had this really interesting thought when Cynthia was just talking, but because I'm tired, it's gone right out of my head. Let me just see. There's something about the low. Oh, I can't remember. I think I might have been going to say something about how powerful the map of the pendulum is, or how powerful having a form where you can grasp the tools. I really saw it make an impression when I used to teach it in domestic violence groups for male perpetrators, that they when they grasp the idea, it's somewhere else to put your energy. It's something where you can conjure up the image, and you're literally activating the thinking part of your brain at a time when you're in the control of other things. And our work connects with all the most recent research, which I mean, I don't read all the most recent research, but it gets filtered down through things you have to do to keep your therapist license. And here we are doing the stuff that other people are coming up with research about trauma and things. And it's in a form you can teach to 8-year-old kids. No one else has that. It's just terrific. Okay, that's it.
Okay, thank you. That's a good note to end on. Thank you, Mary. And yeah, hope to see you on Wednesday.
Yep. Oh, what was the topic again Wednesday? Do you happen to remember? Authority Revisited. That's what we put for Wednesday.
Yeah.
Just an advanced advertisement.
Okay.
Okay, thanks everyone.
Okay, thank you all. Bye-bye.
Guys, thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.